Eidgah, Festival of Eid, written by Premchand, translator is Khushwant Singh. A full 30 days after Ramadan comes Eid. How wonderful and beautiful is the morning of Eid. The trees look greener, the field more festive, the sky has a lovely pink glow. Look at the sun, it comes brighter and more dazzling than before to wish the world a very happy Eid. The village is agog with excitement. Everyone is up early to go to the Eidgah mosque. One finds a button missing from his shirt and is hurrying to his neighbor's house for thread and needle. Another finds that the leather of his shoes has become hard and is running to the oil press for oil to grease it. They are dumping fodder before their oxen because of the time they get back from the Eidgah. It may be late afternoon. It is good 3 miles from the village. There will also be hundreds of people to greet and chat with. They would certainly not be finished before midday. The boys are more excited than the others. Some of them kept only one fast and that only till noon. Some did not even do that. But no one can deny that the joy of going to the Eidgah. Fasting is more for the grown-ups and the aged, right? For the boys, it is only the day of Eid. They have been talking about it all the time. At long last, the day has come, and now they are impatient with people for not hurrying up. They have no concern with things that have to be done. They are not bothered whether or not there is enough milk and sugar for the vermicelli pudding. All they want is to eat the pudding. They have no idea why Abbajan is out of breath running to the house of Chaudhry Karim Ali. They don't know that if the Chaudhry were to change his mind, he could turn the festive day of Eid into a day of mourning. Their pockets bulge with coins like the stomach of the pot-bellied Kubera, the Hindu god of wealth. They are forever talking the treasure out of their pockets, counting and recounting it before putting it back. Mahmood counts 1, 2, 10, 12. He has 12 pies. Mohsin has 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 15 pies. Out of this countless hoard, there will be countless things toys, sweets, paper pipes, rubber balls, and much else to buy. The happiest of the boy is Hamid. He is only 4, poorly dressed, thin and famished looking. His father died last year of cholera. Then his mother wasted away, and without anyone finding out what had allied her, she also died. Now Hamid sleeps in Granny Amina's lap and is as happy as a lark. She tells him that his father has gone to earn money and will return with sacklots of silver, and that his mother has gone to Allah to get lovely gifts from him. This makes Hamid very happy. It is great to live on hope, right? For a child, there is nothing like hope. A child's imagination can turn a mustard seed into a mountain. Hamid has no shoes on his feet. The cap on his head is soiled and tattered. Its gold thread has turned black. Nevertheless, Hamid is happy. He knows that when his father comes back with a sack of full silver and his mother with gifts from Allah, he will be able to fulfill all his heart's desire. Then he will have more than Mahmood, Mohsin, Noore, and Sami. In her Hovel, the unfortunate Amina sheds bitter tears. It is Eid, and she does not have even a handful of grain. Only if her Abid were there, it would have been a different kind of Eid. Hamid goes to his grandmother and says, Granny, don't you fret over me? I will be the first to get back, don't worry. Amina is sad. Other boys are going out with their fathers. She is the only father Hamid has. How can she let him go to the fair all by himself? What if he gets lost in the crowd? No, she must not lose her precious little soul. How can we walk 3 miles? How can he walk 3 miles? He doesn't even have a pair of shoes. He will get blisters on his feet. If she went along with him, she could have picked him up now and then. But then, how would she go now? And who would be there to cook the vermicelli? If only she had the money, she could have bought the ingredients on the way back and quickly made the pudding. In the village, it would take her many hours to get everything. The only way out was to ask someone for them. The villagers live in one party. With the boys is Hamid. They ran on ahead of the elders and wait for them under a tree. Why do the oldies drag their feet and Hamid is like one with wings on his feet? How could anybody think he could get tired? They reach to the suburbs of the town. On both sides of the road are mansions of the rich enclosed all around by thick high walls. In the gardens, mangoes and lychee trees are laden with fruits. A boy hurls a stone at mango tree. The gardener rushes out screaming abuses at them. By then the boys are furlongs out of his reach and roaring with laughter. What a silly ass they make of the gardeners. Then come big buildings, the law courts, the college, and the club. How many boys would there be in this big college? No, sir, they are not all boys. Some are grown up men. They sport enormous mustaches. What are such grown up men going on studying for? How long will they go on doing so? What will they do with all their knowledge? There are only 2 or 3 grown up boys in Hamid school. Absolute dude they are. They get a thrashing every day because they do not work at all. These college fellows must be the same type. Why else should they be there? And the Masonic Lodge. They perform magic there. It is rumored that they make human skulls move about and do other kinds of weird things. No wonder they don't let in outsiders, and the white folk play games in the evenings. Grown up men with mustaches, beard playing games, and not only they, but even their meme sahibs. That's the honest truth. You give my granny that is something they call a racket. She would not know how to hold it, and if she tried to wave it about, she would collapse. Mahmoud says, my mother's hand would shake. I swear by Allah, they would. Mohsin says, mine can grind mounds of grain. Her hand would never shake holding a miserable racket. She draws hundreds of pitchers full of water from the well every day. My buffalo drinks her 5 pitchers. If Memsar had to draw 1 pitcher, she would go blue in the face. Mahmoud interrupts. But your mother could not run and leap about, could she? That's right, replied Mohsin. She could not leap or jump, but one day our cow got loose and began grazing in the Chaudhry's field. My mother ran so fast after it that I could not catch up with her. Honest to God, I could not. So we processed to the stores of the sweetmeat vendor, all so gaily decorated. Who can eat all this delicious? Just look. Every store has them piled up in mountain heaps. They say that after one nightfall, genes come and buy everything. My Abba says that midnight there is a jinn at every stall. He has all that remains baked and pays in real rupees, just the sort of rupees we have, says Mohsin. Hamid is not convinced. Where would the jinns come by rupees? Jinns are never short of money, replies Mohsin. They can get any treasure they want. Mister, don't you know iron bars can stop them? They have all the diamonds and rubies they want. If they are pleased with anyone, they will give him baskets full of diamonds. They are here on one moment and 5 minutes later they can be in the Calcutta. Hamid asks again, are these jeans very big? Each one is as big as the sky, asserts Mohsin. He has his feet on the ground, his head touches the sky. But if he so wanted, he could get into a tiny brass pot. How do people make jinns happy? Asked Hamid. If anyone taught me the secret, I would make at least one jinn happy with me. I don't know, replies Mohsin, but the Chaudhry Sahib has a lot of jinns under his control. If anything is stolen, he can trace it and even tell you the name of the thief. Jinns tell him everything that is going on in the world. Hamid understands how Chaudhry Sahib has come by his wealth and why people hold him in so much respect. It begins to get crowded. Parties heading for the Eidgah are coming into town for different sides, each one dressed better than the other. Someone tongas and ekas, some in motor cars, all wearing perfume, all bursting with excitement. Our small party of village is not bothered about the poor show they make. They are calm, contented lot. For village children, everything in the town is strange. Whatever catches their eye, they stand and gap it with wonder. Cars hoot frantically to get them out of the way, but they could not care less. Hamid is nearly run over by a car. At long last, the Eidgah comes in view. Above it are massive tamarind trees casting their shade on the cemented floor on which carpets have been spread. And there are row upon row of worshippers as far as the eye can see, spiraling well beyond the mosque courtyard. Newcomers line themselves behind the others. Here neither wealth nor status matter, because in the eyes of Islam all men are equal. Our villagers wash their hands and feet, make their own line behind the others. What a beautiful, heart moving sight it is. What a perfect coordination of movements. 100,000 heads held together in prayer, and then all together they stand erect, bow down, sit on their knees. Many times they repeat this movement exactly as if 100,000 electric bulbs were switched on and off at the same time again and again. What a wonderful spectacle it is! The prayer is over. Men embarrass each other. They descend on the street and toy vendors' stores like an army moving to an assault. In this matter, the grown-up rustic is no less eager than the boys. Look, here is the swing. Pay a pice and enjoy riding up the heavens and the down to the earth. And here is the roundabout strung with wooden elephants, horses, and camels. Pay one pice and have 25 rounds of fun. Mahmoud and Mohsin and Noore and other boys mount the horses and camels. Hamid watches them from a distance. All he has are 3 pice. He could not afford to part with a third of his treasure for a few miserable rounds. They have finished with the roundabouts. Now it is time for the toys. There is a row of stalls on one side with all kinds of toys. Soldiers and milkmaids, king and ministers, water carriers and washerwomen, holy men, splendid display. How lifelike! All they need are tongues to speak. Mahmoud buys a policeman in khaki with a red turban on his head and a gun on his shoulder. Looks as if he is marching in a parade. Mohsin likes the water carrier with his back bent under the weight of the water bag. He holds the handle of the bag in one hand and looks pleased with himself. Perhaps he is singing. It seems as if the water is about to pour out of the bag. Noore has fallen for the lawyer. But what an expression of learning he has on his face. A black gown over a long white coat with a gold watch chain going into a pocket. A fat volume of some law book in his hand. Appears as if he has just finished arguing a case in a court of law. These toys cost 2 pice each. All Hamid has are 3 pice. How can he afford to buy such expensive toys? If they dropped out of his hand, they would be smashed to bits. If a drop of water fell on them, the paint would run out. What would he do with the toys like this? They would be no use to him. Mohsin says, my water carrier will sprinkle water every day, morning and evening. Mahmoud says, my policeman will guard my house. If a thief comes near, he will shoot him with his gun. Noore says, my lawyer will fight my cases. Sami says, my washerwoman will wash my clothes every day. Hamid pulls their toys. They are made of clay. One fall, they will break in pieces. But his eyes look at them hungrily and he wishes he could hold them in his hands for just a moment or two. His hands stretch without his wanting to stretch them. But young boys are not givers, particularly when it is something new. Poor Hamid does not get to touch the toys. After the toys, it is sweets. Someone buys sesame seeds, candy, other gulab jamuns or halwa. They smack their lips with relish. Only Hamid is left out. The luckless boy has at least 3 pies. Why doesn't he also buy something to eat? He looks with hungry eyes at the others. Mohsin says, Hamid, take his sesame candy, it smells good. Hamid suspects it is a cruel joke. He knows Mohsin does not have so big a heart. But knowing this, Hamid goes to Mohsin. Mohsin takes a piece out of his leaf wrap and holds it towards Hamid. Hamid stretches out his hand. Mohsin puts the candy in his own mouth. Mahmoud, Noori and Sami clap their hands with glee and have a jolly good laugh. Hamid is crestfallen. Mohsin says, this time I will let you have it. I swear by Allah, I will give it to you. Come and take it. Hamid replies, you keep your sweets, don't I have the money? All you have are 3 pies. Says Sami, what can you buy for 3 pies? Mahmoud says, Mohsin is a rascal. Hamid, you come to me and I will give you gulab jamun. Hamid replies, what is there to rave about sweets? Books are full of bad things about eating sweets. In your heart, you must be saying, if I could get it, I would eat it, says Mohsin. Why don't you take the money out of your pocket? I know what this clever fellow is up to, says Mahmoud. When we have spent all our money, he will buy sweets and teases us. After the sweet vendor, there are a few hardware stores and shops for real and artificial jewelry. There is nothing there to attract the boys' attention, so they go ahead. All of them except Hamid, who stopped to see a pile of tongs. It occurs to him that his granny does not have a pair of tongs. Each time she bakes chapatis, the iron plate burns her hand. If he were to buy her a pair of tongs, she would be very pleased. She would never burn their fingers. It would be a useful thing to have in the house. What use are toys? They are waste of money. You can have some fun with them, but only for a very short time. Then you forget all about them. Hamid's friends have gone ahead. They are at a stall drinking sarbat. How selfish they are. They bought so many sweets but did not give him one. And then they want him to play with them. They want him to do odd jobs for them. Now, if any of them ask him to do something, he would tell them, go suck your lollipop. It will burn your mouth. It will give you a rash of pimples and holes. Your tongue will always crave for sweets. You will have to steal money to buy them and get a thrashing in the bargain. It's all written in books. Nothing will happen to my tongue. No sooner my granny sees my pair of tongs, she will run up to take it from me and say, my child has bought me a pair of tongs, and shower me with 1,000 of blessings. She will show it off to the neighbors, women folk. Soon the whole village will be saying, Hamid has bought his granny a pair of tongs. How nice he is. No one will bless the other boys for the toys they have got for themselves. Blessing of elders are heard in the court of Allah and are immediately acted on. Because I have no money, Mohsin and Mahmoud adopt such airs towards me. I will teach them a lesson. Let them play with their toys and eat all the sweets they can. I will not play with the toys. I will not stand any nonsense from anyone. And one day my father will return, and also my mother. Then I will ask these chaps, do you want any toys? How many? I will give each one a basket full of toys and teach them how to treat friends. I'm not the sort of who buys a pie's worth of lollipops to tease others by sucking them myself. I know they will laugh and say Hamid has bought a pair of tongs. They can go to the devil. Hamid asks the shopkeeper how much for this pair of tongs. The shopkeeper looks at him and seeing no older person with him replies, it's not for you. Is it for sale or not? Why should it not be for sale? Why else should I have bothered to bring it here? Why then don't you tell me how much it is? It will cost you 6 pies. Hamid heart sinks. Let me have the correct price. Alright, it will be 5 pies, bottom price. Take it or leave it. Hamid steals his heart and says, will you give it to me for 3? And proceeds to walk away lest the shopkeeper screams at him. But the shopkeeper does not scream. On the contrary, he calls Hamid back and gives him the pair of tongs. Hamid carries it on his shoulder as if it were a gun and struts up proudly to show it to the friends. Let us hear what they have to say. Mercy laughs and says, are you crazy? What will you do with this tongs? Hamid flings the tong on the ground and replies, try and throw your water carrier on the ground. Every bone in his body will break. Mahmud says, are these tongs some kind of toy? Why not? Retorts Hamid. Place them across your shoulder and it is a gun. While them in your hand, it is like the tong carried by singing mendicants. They can make the same clanging as a pair of cymbals. One smack and they will reduce all your toys to dust. And much as your toys may try, they could not bend a hair on the head of my tongues. My tongues are like a brave tiger. Sami, who had bought a small tambourine, asked, will you exchange them for my tambourine? It is worth 8 pies. Hamid pretended not to look at the tambourine. My tongues, if they wanted to, could tear out the bowls of your tambourine. All it has to leather skin and all it can say is thub thub. A drop of water could silence it forever. My brave pair of tongs can weather water and storm without budging an inch. The pair of tongs wins over everyone to its side. But now one has any money left and the fairground has been left far behind. It is well past 9 a.m. and the sun is getting hotter every minute. Everyone is in a hurry to get home. Even if they talked their fathers into it, they could not get the tongs. This Hamid is a bit of a rascal. He saved up his money for the tongs. The boy divided into two factions, Mohsin, Mahmud, Sami and Noor on the one side and Hamid by himself on the other. They are engaged in the hot argument. Sami has defected to the other side, but Mohsin, Mahmud and Noor, though they are a year or two older than Hamid, are reluctant to take him on the debate. Right is on Hamid's side and also its moral force in the one side. Clay on the other. Hamid is an iron now calling itself steel, unconquerable and lethal. If a tiger was to spring on them, the water carrier would be out of his wits. Mr. Constable would drop his clay gun and take to his heels. The lawyer would hide his face in his gown, lie down on the ground and wail as if the mother's mother had died. But the tongs, the pair of tongs, champion of India, would leap and grab the tiger by its neck and gouge out his eyes. Mohsin puts all he has in his plea, but they cannot go and fetch water, can they? Hamid raises the tongs and replied, one angry word of command from my tongue and your water carrier will hasten to fetch the water and sprinkle it any doorstep he is ordered to. Mohsin has no answer. Mahmud comes to his rescue. If we are caught, we are caught. We will have to do the rounds of the law courts in chains. Then we will be at the lawyer's feet asking for help. Hamid has no answer to his powerful argument. He asks, who will come to arrest us? Noor puffs out his chest and replies, the policeman with the gun. Hamid makes a face and says with scorn, this wretch come to arrest champion of India? Okay, let's have it out over a bout of wrestling. Far from catching them, he will be scared to look at my tongue in his face. Mohsin thinks of another blow. Your tongue's face will burn in the fire every day. He is sure that this will leave Hamid speechless. That is not so. Back comes Hamid with the retort, Mister, it is only the brave who can jump into fire. Your miserable lawyers and policemen and water carriers will run like frightened women into their homes. Only this champion of India can perform this feat of leaping into the fire. Mahmud has one more try. The lawyer will have a chairs to sit and tables for his things. Your tongue will only have the kitchen floor to lie on. Hamid cannot think of an appropriate retort, so he says whatever comes into his mind. The tongs won't stay in the kitchen. When your lawyer sits on his chair, my tongs will knock him down on the ground. It does not make sense, but our three heroes are utterly squashed, almost as if a champion kite had been bowed down from the heaven to the earth by a cheap, miserable paper imitation. Thus Hamid wins the field. His tongs are the champion of India. Neither Mohsin nor Mahmud, neither Noor nor Sami nor anyone else can dispute the fact. The respect that a victor commands from a vanquished is paid to Hamid, and the others have spent between 12 to 16 pies each and bought nothing worthwhile. Hamid's 3 pies worth as a carried the day. And no one can deny that the toys are unreliable things, they break, while Hamid's tongue will remain as they are for years. The boys begin to make terms of peace. Mohsin says, "Give me a tongue. For a while you can have my water carrier for some time." Both Mahmoud and Noor similarly offer their toys. Hamid has no hesitation in agreeing to these terms. The tongue passes from one hand to another, and the toys are in turn handed to Hamid. How lovely they are! Hamid tries to wipe the tears off his defeated adversaries. "I was simply pulling your leg, honestly, I was. How can these tongues made of iron compare with your toys?" It seems that one or other will call Hamid's bluff. But Mohsin's party are not souls. The tongs have won the day, and no amount of water can wash away their stamp of authority. Mohsin says, "No one will bless us for these toys." Adds, "You talk of blessings, you may get a thrashing instead." My Amma is bound to say, "Are these earthen toys all that you could find at fair?" Hamid has to concede that no mother will be as pleased with the toys as his granny will be when she will see the tongs. All he had was 3 pies, and he has no reason to regret the way he has spent them. And now his tongs are the champion of India and king of toys. By 11, the village was again agog with excitement. All those who had gone to the fair were back at home. Mohsin's little sister ran up, wrenched the water carrier out of his hand, and began to dance with joy. Mr. Water Carrier slipped out of her hand, fell on the ground, and went to paradise. The brother and sister began to fight, and both had lots to cry about. Their mother lost her temper because of the racket they were making and gave each two resounding slaps. Noor's lawyer met an end befitting his grand status. A lawyer could not sit on the ground, he had to keep his dignity in mind. 2 nails were driven into the wall and plank out on them, and carpet of paper spread on the plank. The honourable counsel was seated like a king on his throne. Noor began to wave a fan over him. He knew that in the law court there were push curtains and electric fans, so the least he could do was to provide a hand fan. Otherwise, the hot legal arguments might affect his lawyer's brain. Noor was waving his fan made of bamboo leaf. We do not know whether it was the breeze or the fan or something else that bowed the honourable counsel down from his high pedestal to the depth of hell and reduced his gown to mingle with the dust of which it was made. There was much beating of breast, and the lawyer's buyer were dumped on a dung heap. Mahmoud's policeman remained. He was immediately put on duty to guard the village, but the police constable was no ordinary mortal who could walk on his own 2 feet. He had to provide a palanquin. This was a basket lined with a tattered and discarded cloth of red color for the policeman to recline in comfort. Mahmoud picked up the basket and started on his rounds. His 2 younger brothers followed him hissing. "Shopkeepers, keep away. But night has to be dark." Mahmoud stumbled. The basket slipped out of his hand. Mr. Constable with his gun crashed on the ground. He was short of one leg. Mahmoud began a bit of a doctor knew of an ointment which could quickly rejoin broken limbs. All it needed was the milk of banyan sapling. The milk was bought and the broken leg resembled. But no sooner was the constable but on his feet, the leg gave away. One leg was of no use because now he would neither walk nor sit. Mahmoud became a surgeon and cut the other leg in the size of broken one so the chap could at least sit in comfort. The constable was made into a holy man. He could sit in one place and guard the village. Now let's hear what happened to our friend Hamid. As soon as she heard his voice, Granny Amina ran out of the house, picked up him, kissed him. Suddenly she noticed a tong in his hand. "Where did you find these tongs?" "I bought them." "How much did you pay for them?" "3 pies." Granny Amina beat her breast. "You stupid child. It is almost noon and you haven't had anything to eat or drink. And what do you buy? Tongs? Could not you find anything better in the fair than this pair of iron tongs?" Hamid replies in injured tones. "You burn your fingers on the iron plate. That is why I bought them." The old woman's temper suddenly changed to love, not the kind of calculated love. which washed away in spoken words. This love was mute, solid, steeped with tenderness. And the stranger thing happened, stranger than the part played by the tongs was the role of Hamid, the child playing Hamid the old man, and old Granny Amina became Amina the little girl. She broke down. She spread her apron and spread all the Allah's blessing for her grandchild. Big tears fell from her eyes. How was Hamid to understand what was going on inside her? This is a beautiful story.